This weekend, we started a new series going through the life of Elijah. He's a famous prophet in the Old Testament. His story spans two books, 1 Kings, starting verse 17, through 2 Kings, chapter 2. Now, that's the lower story. That's the story of his life here on earth. But there's an upper story. From God's perspective, Elijah bridges way more than just two books. He bridges two covenants, the Old Covenant, Old Testament, and New Covenant, New Testament. I want to talk about that by reading two verses, both from the book of Malachi. That's the last book of the Old Testament. Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. This is the upper story. I will send my messenger who will prepare the way before me. Then suddenly, the Lord you are seeking will come to his temple. What this prophecy is saying is that God is going to come to Jerusalem. He's going to show up where we live. Now, the people reading in the Old Testament, they thought God would be like God, the invisible God, the God of heaven. What we now know is that God took the humble posture of being incarnate in a human being. So the God Malachi is talking about is the Messiah. And they thought that Elijah coming back would be the Messiah. No, Elijah coming back would introduce the Messiah who is actually God. I know this is a bit confusing. It was for them too. But watch the promise. These are the final, not just the final book of the Old Testament, the final verses of the Old Testament. Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and 6. See, I will send you the prophet Elijah before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and strike the land with a curse. Again, these final words of the Old Testament are predicting a time when an Elijah figure would come to usher in God himself. It wasn't Jesus the Messiah who was Elijah, rather it was John the Baptist, who represents the one who ushers in the coming of the Messiah, the great day of the Lord. And notice what it says. He will turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children to their fathers. That's not just a biological family. That is the people of God living in this generation, looking back on the faithfulness of those who followed God in generations past. And if they don't turn to God through the preaching of John the Baptist, turn to Jesus, there would be a curse on the land. That's exactly what happened. When Jesus was rejected through crucifixion, there was the promise of punishment that took place in 70 AD when the entire nation was destroyed. This study of Elijah, we're going through learning lessons from his life, but there's bigger things at play than just Elijah. 71 times Elijah is mentioned in the Old Testament and 28 times in the New Testament. There is hardly a figure mentioned more than Elijah in the New Testament. Here are the major places that he shows up. In the Transfiguration, he's mentioned 12 times in the three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. At the Great Confession, he's mentioned 5 times. At the crucifixion, he's mentioned 4 times. You might recall when Jesus quoted Psalm 22, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. They thought he said Elijah, not Eloi, my God. And so they said, well, let Elijah come save him because Elijah is supposed to come before the great and glorious day of the Lord. Jesus himself one time mentions Elijah. That's in Luke chapter 4, verse 26. This is one of the two most important passages where Elijah is mentioned in the New Testament. I'll mention both of them. This first one, the reason it's important is that when Jesus preached his first sermon in Nazareth, they said, "Why? Like, who do you think you are? You think you're the Messiah?" And Jesus says, yeah, and it's more than that. Just like Elijah's ministry was to those outside of Israel, so my ministry will be outside of Israel. In other words, the model of Elijah's life takes us further and further afield. Many people think religion is about getting to the center, about being good, about following all the rules. And Elijah's saying, no, his whole life is about the widow at Nain, about people far distant from God. Our faith in God is measured not by how many rules we follow, but by how far we go to bring people back to God. The second passage that's so important for Elijah's model for us in the New Testament is James chapter 5, verse 17. where it says that he prayed with power like no other. What's interesting is the prayer that James talks about isn't even mentioned in the Old Testament. It just says he called for a drought. But James makes it clear that he prayed to God for the drought, and then he prayed to God for the rain. Elijah's not just a model of prayer. He's a model of patience, and not really a positive model. He shows us a mirror of our own impatience and struggles with God. There are two lessons here. First, good people struggle with broken expectations with God. I do. I bet you do too. And here's the second. It's a reminder of God's continued faithfulness when we can't even see it. That's what we talked about this weekend, and that's worth talking about again right now. Your patience with God and your long waiting for God to answer your prayers.